When you think of a grenade, you think of destruction, fragmentation, the iconic pineapple shape, the pull of a pin, followed by a deafening blast and a spray of lethal shrapnel. It's an image seared into our collective consciousness by a century of warfare and cinema. But what about a grenade designed not to kill? One built to create a moment of perfect confusion or a wall of impenetrable smoke. What happens when the goal isn't to eliminate the enemy, but to manipulate their senses, to rob them of sight and sound, and to bend their will without ending their life? That's a different kind of battlefield tool altogether. This isn't about raw explosive power. It's about controlling the environment and the people in it. It's a shift from brute force to psychological warfare, packaged in a handheld device. Today we're looking at the history of the stun grenade and the smoke grenade, devices of disorientation and concealment. Their story is one of tactical necessity, scientific innovation, and a fundamental change in how we approach conflict. The core idea is ancient, really. Obscuring vision. Military commanders have used smoke from fires for millennia. Think of ancient armies setting damp wood ablaze to create thick plumes that mask an advance or a retreat, turning a clear battlefield into a landscape of ghosts and shadows. Creating a sudden, terrifying shock to break enemy formations? That's as old as war itself. The blare of trumpets, the beat of war drums, the terrifying war cries of a charging horde, all were designed to induce panic and shatter an opponent's morale before the first blow was even struck. But turning those concepts into a reliable, throwable canister, that's a 20th century story. It starts not with special forces, but in the grinding industrial chaos of the First World War. This was a new kind of war, defined by trenches, machine guns, and artillery, where any movement in the open was a death sentence. In the trenches, the need to conceal movement was desperate. Early smoke grenades were often improvisations, born from the grim ingenuity of soldiers at the front. Accounts describe soldiers using standard explosives to kick up dust and debris, or crude cans filled with phosphorus or other chemicals that produced a dense cloud when ignited. These early devices were unpredictable, their fuses unreliable, their smoke often thin and wispy, carried away by the slightest breeze. The goal was simple: create a screen, mask a retreat, or blind a machine gun nest, just long enough for an assault to cover no man's land. Even a few seconds of obscurity could mean the difference between life and death for an entire platoon. They were unreliable, often as dangerous to the user as to the enemy. A poorly thrown grenade could fill your own trench with choking fumes. But the tactical value was undeniable. The concept was proven, and military chemists and engineers took notice. Between the wars, development continued, particularly with chemical smokes. The focus shifted from improvisation to standardization. By World War II, standardized smoke grenades were a common issue, a recognized and essential part of an infantryman's kit. You had white phosphorus, which produced an incredibly dense white cloud, but also had a nasty secondary effect as an incendiary weapon, burning fiercely and sticking to any surface it touched. And then there were safer, colored smokes. These were crucial for signaling. A pilot in a shot-up plane might pop a colored smoke grenade on landing to signal his status. Troops on the ground could use them to mark positions for aircraft, a vital tool in the new era of combined arms. A plume of purple or green smoke could guide a bombing run or designate a landing zone for reinforcements. The grenade wasn't just a weapon anymore, it was a communication device. But the real revolution in non-lethal grenades came from a very specific and dangerous problem: hostage rescue. The 1970s saw a rise in terrorist incidents, plane hijackings, and barricade situations. Groups like the PLO and the Red Army faction brought a new kind of terror to the world stage. Police and early counterterrorism units faced a nightmare scenario. How do you assault a room full of hostages and armed captors without causing a bloodbath? You needed to shift the odds, and you needed to do it in the first 2 or 3 seconds of entry. This is where the stun grenade, or flashbang, was born. The Pioneer was Britain's legendary Special Air Service, the SAS. They needed a tool that could incapacitate without killing, creating a window of opportunity for their assault teams. Their solution, developed for operations like the 1980 Iranian embassy siege, was the G60 or flash grenade. The principle was psychological and physiological overload. It wasn't about shrapnel. An old SAS operative's memoir described it as creating a moment of controlled chaos. Here's how historical reports describe its effect. When initiated, the grenade produces a blinding flash of over 1 million candela. That's like a camera flash going off right in your face, but 1,000 times brighter. This intense light overwhelms the photoreceptors in the retina, causing flash blindness and afterimages that can last for several seconds or even minutes. Simultaneously, it creates a deafening bang, often around 170 decibels or more. That's louder than a jet engine at close range. This sound wave can rupture the eardrum and, more importantly, it violently stimulates the fluid in the inner ear, which controls our sense of balance. The effect is immediate disorientation, a stunned silence, blurred vision, a loss of balance and spatial awareness. It creates a vital window, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, where assault teams can enter and neutralize threats before the occupants can react. It's a tool that plays on the human nervous system itself. The classic design, like the American M84, is a steel cylinder with holes to vent the flash and pressure. Inside, you have a magnesium-based charge mixed with an oxidizer like potassium perchlorate. It's a precise pyrotechnic recipe, enough to stun, but carefully calculated to minimize the risk of fire or lethal overpressure in an enclosed space. The heavy steel body is designed to stay intact, preventing fragmentation. Of course, they're not without risk. The intense heat can ignite flammable materials, and direct contact can cause severe burns. There have been tragic accidents, but in the tactical toolbox, they became a game changer. Meanwhile, smoke grenades kept evolving beyond simple white screens. Colored smokes became brighter, longer lasting, with a wider palette for more complex signaling. Specialty smokes emerged, infrared obscurants to blind enemy sensors, not just human eyes. These grenades release particles of brass or carbon fiber that reflect or absorb infrared light, effectively hiding troops and vehicles from thermal imagers and night vision devices. And then there are hot and cold smokes. White phosphorus is hot. It burns to create smoke. Hexachloroethane, or HC, smoke is cold, generated by a chemical reaction rather than combustion, making it safer to use around vehicles or fuel. The impact on tactics is profound. Think about a modern military withdrawal. It's often covered by a smoke screen launched from grenades, vehicles, or artillery, allowing forces to disengage with fewer casualties. In law enforcement, smoke can be used to disorient or contain a situation, flushing suspects out of a building, or obscuring the approach of a SWAT team. And the flashbang. It defined the dynamic entry of special operations units worldwide. From counterterrorism to high-risk warrants, its signature bang and flash became synonymous with a very specific kind of sudden, overwhelming resolution. It's fascinating, really. These grenades represent a move from pure lethality towards a more nuanced goal: temporary neutralization. They're about controlling perception, sight, and sound to achieve a tactical advantage. They acknowledge that in many modern scenarios, from peacekeeping to policing, the objective is not to kill, but to control. They allow for outcomes that don't necessarily end in a body count. In an era where conflicts are often played out in front of cameras and in crowded urban spaces, that's become increasingly important. The ability to de-escalate, to capture, to resolve a crisis with minimal loss of life is a capability that these tools, for all their dangers, provide. From a crude, smoking canister in a WWI trench to the precisely timed flash that heralds a rescue mission, these tools show how warfare and law enforcement adapted to new challenges. They are a testament to human ingenuity in its most pragmatic and sometimes terrifying form. They turned light and sound into weapons, and in doing so, wrote a unique chapter in the long, dark history of the grenade. Which piece of tactical technology would you like us to cover next? Let us know in the comments below.